Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Hannah if you're new here, and today I am going to be discussing something that is new to me but apparently has been going on for 10 years, which is the r/fantasy Reddit subreddit bingo challenge for 2024. Apparently, I don't go on Reddit at all, but apparently the r/fantasy subreddit has been putting on a reading challenge every year for the last 10 years. And it is basically a list of 25 prompts, and you have to read 25 books for those prompts over the course of the year. And this particular year, the challenge runs from April 1st of 2024 to March 31st of 2025. So you have a full calendar year, but it's not January to January, if that makes sense. There are a couple rules. First of all, no duplicating. So they must be 25 books individually. You can't reuse the same book for more than one prompt. The second rule is you can't use the same author twice. This one's that's a hard one. So you have to have one author per space as well. And then the third rule is you can only reread for one of the 25 books. Personally, I'm not going to be rereading for this challenge. I reread so much anyway, and so I'm trying to set the extra challenge on myself to not include any rereads for completing this bingo board. I'm gonna scoot over so I can show you what the bingo board looks like, and in this video I'm gonna be going through all 25 prompts. There's an easy mode and a hard mode. So I'll be discussing both of the modes. The hard mode is basically just to make it more challenging. And I will be discussing my plans to complete this board. I'm not going to be talking too much about the plot summary of these books or anything like that. I'm just going to talk about how I think it fits the prompt and how I found these books. Basically, on the r/fantasy subreddit, the announcement for this challenge, there are individual threads for each of these prompts, and users have been adding their book recommendations for each prompt. So I spent hours and hours and hours combing through all of those replies, everybody's recommendations, to find books to fit these prompts. Because some of these prompts, it's hard to know if a book is going to fit a prompt unless you've already read the book and can say, oh yeah, it had this element in it, I can have it in this prompt. So I really recommend, if you want to do this challenge, go to that thread and all those threads to find books to fit these prompts. Again, I spent hours doing that, and I really appreciate the community for doing that. For me personally, I'm gonna use this as like a point system. So each time I complete a prompt, it's 1 point, and if I complete the hard mode prompt, it's an additional point. So there are 2 points possible for me for each square, for a total of 50 points. And that's just a way that I'm kind of gamifying it. I'm gonna try to hit as close to 50 points as possible. We'll see if I can do that by next March. I'm gonna start at the top left and work my way across, and then go down the rows that way. The first prompt is first book in a series. Read the first book in a series. The hard mode edition is the series is more than 3 books long. This is a super easy prompt to fill. Just starting a new series is very easy for a lot of fantasy readers. And I have so far already completed this prompt because I read the first book in the Of Blood and Bone series by John Gwynne, which is A Time of Dread. And so I read this in April, so it counts towards this. The one downside is this series is only 3 books long. So if I start another series throughout the year that is more than 3 books long, I can slot that in instead. The second prompt is alliterative titles. Read a book where multiple words in the title begin with the same letter. Hard mode is the title has 3 words or more that start with the same letter. And I already completed this one as well, and I read Princess Floralinda and the 40 Flight Tower. So not only did I already complete this book for 1 point, I also completed it for hard mode. And that was a little novella. Prompt 3 is under the surface. Read a book where an important setting is either underground or underwater. Hard mode, at least half of the book takes place underground or underwater, and I picked The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. I have no idea how this fits the prompt, but there's sea in the title. Maybe we go underwater, maybe we go underground. I don't know. Thanks to the Reddit community for suggesting this one, though. And I have no idea if this counts for hard mode or not. I've loved Erin Morgenstern in the past, The Night Circus, so hopefully I will also enjoy this one. Number 4 is Criminals. Read a book in which the main character is a criminal. This could be a thief, assassin, someone who commits mail fraud, etc. Hard mode is it features a heist. And the book that I am picking is Running Close to the Wind by Alexandra Rowland. Now, Alexandra Rowland is a great author, and I've loved them in the past. And this is a pirate book. Pirates are criminals, technically. This is just an excuse to read this book because I want to read Alexandra Rowland's new book, essentially. Hopefully it's a heist novel, but I have no idea. I just know they're pirates, so it fits. So it could be 1 or 2 points. 5 is Dreams. Read a book where characters experience dreams, magical or otherwise. Hard mode, the dream is not mystical or unusual, just a normal dream or nightmare. For this one, I am reading The Spear Cuts Through Water by Simon Jimenez. I already started this book, and there are already dreams in the first 30 minutes of this book. The main character like falls asleep and goes to like a dreamland sort of thing. So definitely fits, and I don't know if this technically counts for hard mode or not. I'll have to finish the book. 6, Entitled Animals. Read a book that has an animal in the title. The animal does not have to appear in the story. Hard mode is the animal in the title is a fantasy or sci-fi creature, such as a unicorn, a leviathan, etc. For this prompt, I'm choosing The Voyage of the Basilisk by Marie Brennan. This is the 3rd book in the Memoirs of Lady Trent series, and Basilisk is a fantasy creature, so when I complete this will be 2 points. 7 is Bards. Read a book in which the primary protagonist is a bard, musician, poet, or storyteller. Hard mode, the character is explicitly called a bard. And so this one is tough, but I picked Mammoths at the Gates because the main character, Chi, is a storyteller, and which counts for the prompt. So this doesn't count necessarily for hard mode, but it does take off the prompt. Mammoth at the Gates is a part of a novella short stories series, and I already completed this one as well. If I find a bard in any of my other books, though, I can slot that in instead, but it's actually hard to find fantasy with bards. 8, Prologues and Epilogues. Read a book that has either a prologue or an epilogue. Hard mode is the book has both, and I'm reading The Justice of Kings by Richard Swan for this. I've already had this book on my list to read, and I know it has a epilogue, but apparently it only has an epilogue, so if I read a different book that has both, I could slot that in instead. Number 9 is self-published or indie publisher. Self-published or published through an indie publisher. If formerly self-published novel has been picked up by a publisher, it only counts for the challenge if you read it when it was still only self-published. Hard mode is self-published and has fewer than 100 ratings on Goodreads. Or the indie publisher has done an AMA with our fantasy. What that means is like they do like a book of the month type of thing where they read a book together, and so if you pick one from that list, that counts. So technically I've already completed this one. I read Entreat Me by Grace Draven, which is a self-pub or indie pub book, and which I loved, by the way. But it has way more than 100 ratings. However, I have another one. It's called The Galactic Zookeeper's Guide to Heists and Husbandry. Heists could fit for the other prompt. And it says 125. And I feel like that's close enough to hit hard mode. But technically, I've already read one book that's self-pub or indie pub. Number 10 is Romantasy. Read a book that features romance as a main plot. This must be speculative in nature, but does not have to be fantasy. Hard mode is the main character is LGBTQIA+. So I have 2 options for this because my first option is The Unbroken by C.L. Clarke, but this is a queer romance in here, but I think this might be heavier on the fantasy and less on the romance, so maybe this isn't considered a romantasy book. A romantasy book that I also want to read is called Throne of the Fallen by Carrie Maniscalco. Sorry. This is actually a romantasy, but it's not queer, or at least the main couple that I know of is a man and a woman. Maybe they're bisexual, I'm not sure. So I kind of have two options for this one. We'll see. I'm pretty sure The Unbroken isn't going to count though. 11 is Dark Academia. Read a book that fits the dark academia aesthetic. Hard mode, the school itself is entirely mundane, and I've completed this one already, and that is An Education in Malice by S.T. Gibson. They go to an all-girl college that is completely normal, and it is definitely dark academia. There are vampires. And it's sapphic. Number 12, multi-POV. Read a book with at least 3 points of view. Hard mode, at least 5 points of view. And I am currently reading Oathbringer by Brandon Sanderson, which has definitely more than 5 points of view. And when I finish that, I will mark off that one. 13, published in 2024. A book that's published for the first time in 2024. Hard mode. It's also the author's first published book. There are a lot of 2024 releases I'm looking forward to, but they're mostly by authors I've read from before. However, I do tend to pick up debuts as well, but for now I have The Dead Cattail Assassins by P. Jelly Clark. I've read this author before, so I would only get 1 point for this. If I do end up picking a debut 2024 release, I can swap that out, but I really want to read this as well. 14, character with a disability. Read a book in which an important character has a physical or mental disability. Hard mode, a main character has a physical or mental disability. So the easy mode is an important character. Hard mode is the main character. And I've already read this one. I read a lot of disability books. The Tainted Cup by Robert Jackson Bennett. The main character is dyslexic. And I would say the second main character is autistic. This is by the way, it's a fantasy mystery, if you're interested. 15, published in the 90s. Pretty self-explanatory. Hard mode is the author or one of the authors has also published something in the last 5 years, so this author must be prolific. And I chose Green Rider by Christian Britton. I've already completed this, and not only is this author still publishing to this day, but they are still publishing in this series. I believe the last book of this series was published in 2019 or 2017, around there. 16, Orcs, Trolls, and Goblins. Oh my. Read a book featuring orcs, trolls, or goblins. Hard mode. As the main character, and I have The Unspoken Name by A.K. Larkwood, and the main character, I believe, is an orc, which is very cool. I have also wanted to read this book for a long time, so I'm glad I'm getting an opportunity to read it. 17 is a space opera. Read a sci-fi book that features a large cast of characters and has a focus on social dynamics, which may be political or personal. Set primarily in space or on spaceships. Hard mode is written by an author of a marginalized gender. I have The Blighted Stars on here by Megan E. O'Keefe. This is an author I've read from before. I need to do more research, but I don't know if Megan E. O'Keefe is part of a marginalized community. I'll have to do more research on that. But I tend to read space operas anyway, so again, I could swap this one out if I end up reading other space operas. 18 is Authors of Color. Read a book by an author of color. Hard mode must be a debut novel published in the last 5 years, and I am picking The Rage of Dragons by Evan Winter. Evan Winter is a Black man, and I've wanted, again, to read this book for a long time, and this is his debut novel. 19, Survival. Read a book in which the primary goal of the character is to stay focused, he has to survive. They have to survive. I can't speak anymore. Hard mode is no super viruses or pandemics, which I wasn't going to read a pandemic book anyway. And I already completed this and the hard mode prompt with The Lives of the Ajungo by Moses O.C. Utomi. And this is a 5-star read for me. He's trying to survive in a desert and save his people who are starving of thirst. That's not right. Dying of thirst. They don't have any water. 20 is Judge a book by its cover. Choose because you like its cover. Hard mode. Pick the book based only on information available on the cover. And I did that. I went to the bookstore and I had to try and find a book I'd never heard anything about and just read the cover. And I found one, and that is The Emperor and the Endless Palace. I saw this cover, I thought it was stunning. I read the synopsis, and I found out that this is a romance with a sci-fi twist, and it has some erotica vibes. So I was already intrigued. The cover drew me in, and then the synopsis really piqued my interest as well. 21, set in a small town. The primary setting is a small town hard mode. The small town can be real or fictional, but the broader setting must be our real world and not a secondary world. And I picked Vita Nostra, which apparently is set in a small town, and it is set in the real world, even though there's fantastical elements. We'll see about this one. I am very skeptical about this book. I've heard it's very strange, so if I end up not liking it, I will have to try and find a different book set in a small town. But this would be hard mode. This would count towards hard mode. 22 is 5 science fiction fantasy short stories. Any 5 short stories or novelettes. Hard mode is read an entire speculative anthology or collection. I am reading The Paper Menagerie and Other Stories by Ken Liu. I love this author. I love The Grace of Kings in that series so much. And I want to read his short story collection, and I've heard it's mostly speculative fantasy, sci-fi, magical realism. And it also won like a bunch of awards, so I'm excited to pick that one up. 23, Eldritch Creatures. Read a book featuring a being that is uncanny, unearthly, and weird. This can be a god or monster from another plane or realm and is usually beyond mortal understanding. And then there's a link for more information if you don't know what Eldritch beings are. Hard mode is the book is not related to Cthulhu mythos. And I'm reading The Ninth Reign for this. Apparently there are eldritch creatures in this as a fantasy, and I'm really excited to pick this one up. There's also like kind of vampires. I'm into it. 24 is reference materials. Read a book that features additional materials such as a map, footnotes, glossary, translation guide, dramatis personae, etc. Hard mode is book contains at least 2 types of additional materials. And so this, again, I feel like many fantasy books have like a map. So I could swap anything in here. But the book I'm wanting to read is The Black Tongue Thief. This is a horror fantasy, and I really like horror fantasy. And I've heard this has reference material. Again, I went to that subreddit, or I went to the community posts about it, and this was mentioned. And it was already on my reading list. And the last prompt is book club or read along book. Any past or active R fantasy book club count. Hard mode is must read a current selection and participate in the discussion. So I went through our fantasies book clubs for the last couple of years, and one of the books really stood out to me because I really need to give this book a second chance, and that's Legendborn by Tracy Dion. This is a young adult fantasy. I think this is the only young adult fantasy on this list, and like I said, I need to give this book a second chance. So that's the one I picked. It is only for easy mode, but I don't care. With all that being said, this is what my bingo board would look like if I completed all these prompts. This is a template that the subreddit like put together for this challenge. So this is what it would look like with everything filled out. I'll give you a couple seconds. And the next image I'm going to show you is what it looks like with the books that I've actually already completed. And that's what this looks like. So I've already made a really good start on this challenge, and I'm really excited to try and finish this one. I'd never heard of this challenge before, and I can't wait to give it a go. In a year's time, I'm going to be doing another video wrapping up this challenge. And the whole point of this challenge is to try to find different books outside your comfort zone and read a variety of different things. And so I will be talking about all of my discoveries after reading these 25 books. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you all. And I will see you in another video of mine very soon. Bye.